You are listening to Wicked Psychotherapists, a podcast where two psychotherapists show you that taking care of and learning about mental health doesn't have to be wicked hot.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya dos Santos.
And I'm Erin Gray.
And this is Wicked Psychotherapists, a podcast brought to you by two therapists who love coffee and who want to bring some casual talk to mental health counseling.
We also bring coffee, tea, and discuss what's in our cups every week. And we hope to share these perspectives with all of you. We hope to infuse a little bit of our experiences and personality in the field of mental health to broaden your noggin.
So, speaking of water, coffee, or tea, what are you drinking today, Erin? You gotta.
Well, today, funny you should ask, Tanya. I'm drinking tea with milk. I had to go to my Irish roots.
Ooh.
You know, like I figured I would do hot tea with a little bit of sugar and milk to ode to the Kennedys and my nanny. And I don't know if you can see who this very handsome man is.
It's your boy, James Spader, your crush.
It is. I am magically, it appeared in my mail yesterday.
I saw it randomly, it popped up on Amazon. Erin was a little sick and I was looking for something just like, a little tea basket or something. And all of a sudden I saw James Spader, and in that picture, it just was like, yep.
And it's so funny because James Spader doesn't usually look smiley. Like in most things, he's usually like very sarcastic or something. And like any of the shows you see him. And so this made me laugh as soon as I saw it. I appreciate it. So I think I'll probably be drinking out of James a lot.
That's easy.
And who or what do you have as your mug, and what are you drinking today?
So I have a little tie with my mug. So I'm drinking just decaf coffee with some coconut milk, which is kind of my standard. But I have, for the Office fans out there, has the
World's
Office
Best
on
Boss.
Michael's cup that he has, World's Best Boss. And if you are an Office fan, you know that James Spader in the later seasons played a pretty big role for a couple of seasons on there, and he was a pretty awesome character. So we kind of have connecting mugs.
That's right.
I didn't consciously think of that, but I don't know, maybe I subconsciously did.
You might have subconsciously been like, all right, what could the tie-in be?
I'm so glad though, because it's
I love it. It's a huge mug too. It's like, I guess they had to put his big mug on this mug.
His smile was so big they had to make it.
They're like, wait a minute, he doesn't usually smile.
I love it. Yeah, my Office cup is, I've been wanting one of these because I think it's from like season 1 in The Office. It's pretty big as well. And I actually got it at like Five Below when I was in Philadelphia, of all places. So
I love Five Below. Five Below, I always feel like, I'm going to just go in and get this and that. And then you end up just like Target, but you feel like it's less because you're spending $5 per thing.
Right. I mean, it can still add up. You can still get a lot of stuff.
Like, I need this journal, or I need this.
Even though you throw it to the side. Well, if you throw it to the side and it just collects dust.
Yeah. I'm looking at like 3 journals that I haven't done anything with, but they're pretty in front of me.
Yeah, they're there. They're eye candy.
So I think like last week we had to take like a week break. So now we're back to Kennedy's, but it gave me a little bit of time to read a very big book.
Very interesting book.
It's very interesting, and I do recommend it. It's called The Kennedy Debutante. It told a little bit about the history of the Kennedys, starting, I think, in like 1938 when they were in England. And it was pretty interesting. And it made me never want to learn anything else but this first and second generation. I became very into it. It was very exciting and interesting.
Yeah, you told me a lot of cool facts and things that you learned from that book, and discovered your love of historical fiction. And Even though it's an accurate picture of the Kennedys, it's just kind of creatively expanded, I guess. And so we decided, we were talking about it so much, and we were like, why don't we just continue talking about the second generation, first and second generations, because it's just, they're interesting. There's so much that's happened to them. And we also wanted to fill in the gaps from a couple of things that we talked about last week, just for people that are, maybe wondering, or, just didn't really want to research, but maybe just wanted to come take a listen to us. So yeah, so you discovered some really cool facts about a lot of them and a lot of the dynamics and everything. What were some of the things that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I think some of it I thought was pretty interesting was Rose Kennedy, the matriarch of the family. How she seemed to be it was very important to her that her children looked and weighed a certain amount and were at a certain number. I guess she would weigh her children every day. And because not only did they have to look a certain way, but she wanted them to weigh a certain amount so that they also looked more important, more fancy. And teeth were another thing that were very important, because we always joke about the Kennedy smile, but it was super important for her that their teeth looked a certain way.
Oh, so Rose was kind of instrumental in that kind of perception and that giving off the right image, the Kennedy image, and she really enforced that in some really strict ways, it sounds like. So she was kind of the enforcer, maybe behind the scenes, but it sounds like it was a pretty rough upbringing.
Yeah, I mean, like, part of the book, and I've read some other stuff thanks to Google.
Google's our friend.
That I guess, like, up until most of the kids were 10, for one of the punishments, she would lock them in the closet, or she would hit them with wire hangers, kind of the whole mommy dearest thing.
Yeah.
But it seemed like it was kind of a very authoritative disciplinarian.
Yeah, definitely. And that's not something that I'm not sure is well known, right? Like, it's not a very well known, and maybe it just hasn't been something I didn't know about that. And it's not really something that kind of floats around a lot. But I do wonder, with you had mentioned that Joe Sr. was kind of seemed to be a little more compassionate on some things.
Yeah, especially with Kick, because the book I read was a lot about her and her, her relationship with her family and going out of the Catholic Church. It was very interesting. It did sound like he had a tender side and was a little bit more compassionate, at least to her, to Kathleen.
So it may be that, there was this driven image, maybe from the two, senior Kennedys, Rose and Joe Sr. They each kind of drove it in very different ways. And maybe there was, I'm not sure, but maybe there was compassion on Rose's part as well in different areas. I'm not sure if the book went into that. Maybe not. I don't know. But it was kind of like they were both driving for particular outcomes in their own ways.
And it seemed like her compassion really was, like, I think she showed her love by, if she would have taken the love language test, her love language would have been gifts, because she was very much into buying new clothes or perfumes or toys, so she was very much into gifts for her children.
I love that you took her into a test for love language. What is your love language? I'm just
My
curious.
love language is actually gifts. I love to purchase things, and I guess I love to receive too, because I love my mug. But I find that I like to buy stuff for people. What about you? What is your love language?
I've gotten different results at different points in my life, but I used to get just words of affirmation. That was kind of primarily mine, but I have recently gotten a tie between quality time and giving gifts. So I don't know, it's kind of evolved a little bit. Maybe that's just because as we evolve, maybe it changes a little, and depending on the relationship you're in, so one test I took was pre my husband and one was after. So
Yeah. I feel like I need to retake it too. I don't know what mine is with receiving, but I know I like to give too. It would be interesting to take it again. It is a good test. Like, so those that are wondering, what are you talking about the love languages? There's a
Oh yeah, we
book.
probably should explain it.
There's a
Good point.
book. I can't even think of who is the author right now, but
Man, I have it on my bookshelf too. It's
I
I know this.
but there is, like, if you go on lovelanguages.com,
Oh yeah.
there is
That's
there is a I was gonna say Covey, but that's not. He's
Chapman? Gary Chapman?
Yep, that would be it. But they want you to know, like, what are your 5 love languages: words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch. A lot of times couples or even parent and child, they may have the same or they may have different. And that's why a lot of times you're like, oh, they don't get me, or why don't they understand, or why don't they love me? It's because maybe they're not receiving it the way you're giving it. So maybe Rose, going back to the Kennedys.
Yeah, I took us out of it.
I did too, though. I totally maybe
just
Rose.
love how you did that, though. How you were like, hey, this might be her love language. I think that's really cool.
But it might be. I mean, it might, like.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it.
On the next episode, we're gonna figure out every Kennedy's love language.
Oh my
Stay
gosh.
tuned.
We might. I don't know, people. You might have to look out for that.
This might be a Kennedy. Hold on, I need a
Kennedy
drink.
podcast. Yeah, you need you need some James Spader. Refresh your palate,
And those that can't see it, it's just you just see James kind of sneaking in for a
just
kiss.
Creeps up.
It looks like he's trying to kiss me.
It does. Oh my god, it's perfect. I love it so much. Oh my gosh. Oh geez. Yeah, so maybe we'll let you know, you'll be able to see, but that is definitely an interesting topic. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. So you do wonder though. I mean, like, if, with the whole family, like, it's how, like, I forget what the article was that we read, but had said something about, like, how one generation, like this family, like the first generation and second generation, how much trauma and loss they had. So then that affects all the other. But this, like, within one family, they had Rosemary, she had the lobotomy, and then she disappeared. Then Kathleen died, Joe died, Bobby and JFK died. And so that's a lot of kids to lose.
Yeah, that's a lot of heartbreak. I mean, it doesn't matter if they were from a time where, like, you might be a little, maybe not even, but like a little more used to, like, knowing that you're going to lose children. Still heartbreaking no matter what. And the circumstances of it too were all, like, a lot of them were very tragic and not very common ways to die. And, and I don't know if I had mentioned last week or if it was just when we were talking about the last surviving Kennedy of the second generation. There actually is not one. Jean was the last surviving one, and she passed away in like 2020. So I think I was reading an old article.
Okay.
Jean is actually, she's the second youngest. And from that article, I was remembering there was this whole thing about her because she's not, we talked about how she was not really well known, but she was appointed ambassador to Dublin.
Oh, okay.
To help out with the Northern Ireland conflict, and apparently, like, did a really great job. And she was kind of the first to be active in politics in that way in the family.
Wow.
So she also, this article also touched upon her husband, Steve Smith, I believe, and he was like the chief of staff at the White House, and how he was a well-known womanizer, and kind of his affairs were very much out in the open. I mean, he did not hide it. He would, like, have pictures with his, like, mistresses and, like, would be balancing one. Apparently it was really controversial because one time he had a Protestant mistress and then a Jewish mistress, and I get the Kennedy boys, as in, John, Robert, and Ted, they all, like, publicly said they looked up to Steve because he was, like, so open with his
affairs.
Like, and they would give him, like, the thumbs up and would be like, and that's what a few articles said. I don't know the
Yeah. Well,
accuracy of that, but I mean,
it makes sense from what I've read too. Joe Sr. was pretty open with his affairs. And then,
really,
yeah, and John F. Kennedy was, we all know about Marilyn Monroe. And, I don't know how, I guess Bobby and Ted also had affairs too, if they were like high-fiving.
yeah, they were I think they were just a little more discreet than a Steve-O there.
Mhm.
But they apparently really admired that in him, but they also said they admired the brothers, like admired his prowess in like political campaigns, and he was a
Mhm.
great advisor. He was really smart with like political stuff, and which was kind of just a weird aside to also have in there, right?
Yeah.
But I guess Jean, people often would remark like, "Oh, poor Jean," like it was so out in the open, and she just kind of
Had to
was,
take it. Well, and also she
yeah,
was probably raised, by with her mother and father that, all right, you don't do anything, you're a Catholic. You can't get divorced because it's against the
right,
Catholic Church. So you just
right,
kind of have to deal with it because for some reason, at least the way they viewed it, the guys are allowed to step out on their marriages and it's not going to affect them.
yeah. It was very much kind of that boys club mentality. They did say that in the article, one of them later on, that Jean did have an affair. I think she was like out of being like fed up and
Hmm.
was just kind of like, she wasn't, I don't think she was all like, letting people take pictures of her, but I think that was maybe her way to rebel a little bit,
Hmm.
was to kind of say, hey, if you can do it, I can do it. I mean, I don't know her motives, but yeah, it definitely was kind of, I guess, that type of psychology. Even your own brothers are giving the thumbs
Yeah.
up to your cheating, brother-in-law, and despite the fact that your sister is hurt and
Yeah.
very much affected by that.
Yeah.
That's
What a dysfunctional family. Isn't that like just that's okay?
Yeah, and applauded even. So, um, yeah, that was definitely, I thought that was really interesting with Jean, because she was one of the kind of lesser known ones, but she actually had a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I did read that Patty, or Patricia, she was like one of the first women to have a cooking show. So I don't know much about it. I couldn't really see much about
Hmm.
it, but she definitely had some interesting stuff going on there. I mean, that's pretty big,
Yeah.
to kind of be the first
To
woman to
put
have
yourself
a
out
cooking
there
show.
too. To
Yeah. And to be kind of in a little bit of a different sphere than everyone, right?
Mhm.
Cooking show. That's kind of different
Yeah, it
than
is. It's not.
politics, and
Yeah,
yeah.
because you're gonna get dirty, you're putting you're being vulnerable. It's
Yeah. It's very creative. It's arts kind of, and entertainment, and but yeah, so those were just little kind of blurbs that I read about those two. I just kind of thought was
yeah,
interesting.
that is very interesting. I didn't know that
Um
about them.
but I know in the book you had read a little more about Rosemary, and also Kick, like some things with Kick, some interesting points that I thought were pretty interesting.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the last episode about Rosemary with having to have the lobotomy and what happened, but it sounds like the mother, Rose, had asked for some advice from Kathleen
Mm.
to like, had she ever heard of this doctor? Like, this is what the father is proposing to have a lobotomy to calm Rosemary down. I guess she was, escaping school or escaping the convent to go to the bars. And, who knows if she was having sex or just hanging out with guys, but it wasn't what they wanted. She
Right.
was in her 20s at this time. So Kick found out some research about this person, and she said that it was a well-known psychiatric hospital in like around the Washington D.C. area, and I guess even like Young and some other people have like well-known people worked there and did work there, but this doctor did lobotomies on people that were severely, having psychosis and other things. And Kick told her mom, like, hey, this doesn't sound like it's something for Rosemary. She's just, maybe we should get her married and get, do something else to,
Yeah, not as drastic as, snipping a cord between one part of your brain to the next.
yeah. And I guess like the father said that, no, this is, what we're going to do. And he talked to Rosemary about this apparently and told her, well, if you have the surgery, you'll be mellowed out a little bit, and
Mm.
then you'll be able to get married and have children. So he sold it to her like, hey, this is like a, basically like he's given her a value. Like it's just like, hey, you're going to be calmed down, and
Yeah.
then you could, but
Couldn't be
after,
anything further
yeah,
further from that.
and then after the surgery happened, the parents just told everybody like, oh, the surgery didn't go as planned. She's going to be in the hospital a little bit longer, and longer turned into, you know, I guess most everyone didn't see her until what, like the 60s, and the surgery was in the 30s.
Yeah, it was a while. And she was in assisted living facilities, and right after the surgery, like she was not able to walk or talk, or she couldn't care for herself. I mean, she needed around the clock care because it disabled her that
Yeah.
much. It was awful. But I guess she was able to regain some of that, but she could never really regain independent
Mhm.
living.
Yeah, and this was even when she was well and walking around, and before the surgery, it sounds like the parents were very embarrassed of her. They wouldn't take her to any of the parties, or they wouldn't really do too much because they didn't want other people to spend too much time with her and know that something was different about her.
Right. And there's that Kennedy image again of, kind of, all going back to, has to be the perfect weight, the perfect smile,
Hmm.
and acceptable. So maybe to, Joe Kennedy and maybe Rose, even, that was considered that extreme behavior. It was so
Hmm.
unacceptable that it was extreme enough that they said, no, this fits the bill. And
Yeah, this will do what we need. It'll be a quick fix. And then we
yeah.
can go back to our campaign and have, Joe Jr. at the time become president.
Mhm.
And, so they
And
had a
just
whole
have
plan.
everything.
Yeah, they had a whole plan of everything.
And I know we talked about, the fact that they probably, of course, they probably did not want her to, Rosemary to be as disabled as she was, unfortunately, after this surgery. I think they maybe were sold something else as well, or maybe there was something, inherent in like the risk if you don't have someone who's done a lot of these surgeries. So I think maybe they did think it would alter her in a more positive light in their opinion, right? Positive behaviors. But at the same time, to take that risk, and it sounds like the risks were known, right? That,
Hmm.
that something could go wrong.
Yeah.
It sounds like it was that important to them.
Yeah. Because I think it was expressed, at least from their daughter. And maybe even they talked to the doctor. Who knows what he said of what the risks were. But they had to. You would think that as a parent, you'd be like, okay, let me see what the people looked like that had this procedure before.
Mhm.
Because I guess it was even known that the people were, they described it as like just like a glass, like they were glassy eyed and just not really themselves. And
Yeah, completely devoid of, their personality before what their essence, what makes them. And, I kind of wonder what maybe would have been if they had decided not to get this lobotomy and then maybe, either tried to kind of work with some of these behaviors, or maybe they would have ended up feeling like, oh, we have to send her away somewhere otherwise, and kind of what those alternative, universes might have been like, right?
Mhm.
Of course, that's along the same line of saying, like, I wonder what it would have been like if we could have stopped the assassination of JFK. You don't
Right.
really know,
Yeah.
could have changed so much. But yeah, that really is interesting because it does sound like from that Rosemary was aware. And I mean, who knows if maybe she just kind of thought, well, okay, this sounds good, and then maybe I can get away and kind of be with, start my own life, and
Yeah.
not feel, so kind of judged or criticized. And oh, that's so heartbreaking that, then it just completely disabled her.
Yeah.
And who knows if she was even maybe aware of that in the mind state that she was in afterwards, if she was aware of how she was before.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there certainly is, that image to maintain. And I think that's what resonates throughout the generations, and that's what becomes an active fight maybe to go against in some generations, right? Of
Yeah.
like we had talked about Saoirse Kennedy. She unfortunately committed suicide in 2019, I believe. She was a fourth generation. She was very open about discussing mental health and was very open about the fact that she struggled with depression. She struggled with a lot of these issues, and unfortunately, she did commit suicide because they were overwhelming and a lot of things overtook her. So it's kind of like these, you see in the later generations, some of these demons still appearing, right? And how it's handled very differently. Like Saoirse was very, very open about it, and very wanted it to be known, even though it was difficult for her. And ultimately, the battle was lost here on Earth for her to be able to survive it. So that's such a contrast.
Yeah, I mean, because you wonder too, like in the second generation or in the third and now the fourth, how many people have struggled with depression or anxiety or drug addiction or alcoholism. It's there. It just hasn't really been talked about.
Right,
And
definitely.
I mean, like you look at the behaviors and also even some of the deaths that you read about. There was a lot of addiction and accidents and
yeah, and a lot of links to maybe criminal behavior, like acting out and everything. Another sign of, something's wrong and something's not going right. So there's been a lot of that. There's also been, a lot of interesting stuff like in the fourth generation with people, some of the I wouldn't say kids, young adults maybe, or, adults even, because that's the age that they're at.
yeah.
Kind of taking on these roles as, in journalism and politics, as we would expect. And, maybe even taking their own route. And who knows, maybe struggling with, the association of being a Kennedy, or maybe benefiting, or maybe both, maybe having a love-hate relationship with it.
Yeah, it was interesting. One of the articles that I think we read about the fourth generation, I forget which family it was, but they're not using the Kennedy name at all. Like it begins with a SCH. I forget who it is, but the family, like the kids.
Schlossberg. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I know who you're saying, but yeah, so they don't even use the Kennedy name. Like you would have to do a lot of research, be like, okay, these are just, whoever they are.
So some of them are even cutting ties completely. They just are like, snip, I don't want that legacy. I don't want what that brings. I wonder if that does involve the money as well. I mean, they're just not, they're like, well, maybe, middle class somewhat, but not as wealthy as people would think. So it's, been kind of dwindling in that, but
yeah, but still, I mean, like we have to figure out what is their definition of middle class. I mean,
right. It could be very, very different from our perception.
Yeah, I mean, like middle class for them might still be getting a Harvard education paid for, and it's not. It's a little bit different.
Yeah,
but
and there's the richness of the network of having that name, but there's also kind of the curse, right? Yeah, the Kennedy curse associated with it, and that might be why the Schlossbergs, I'm saying that right, are, we're just like, what, that part of it, the curse outweighs the other parts. And
and that's all of Caroline's kids, right? Those kids.
Yes.
Those are which is very interesting because it was so important for Jackie to protect John and Caroline. So it makes sense then that she would then go by her married last name. And
that's a good point. So you definitely see Jackie's influence there. Wow. So that kind of, sensing that and seeing that she passed that along, which is, kind of, I think, something that served as like a protective measure for them. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we could go on and on, even branch out to the love languages with the Kennedys. Which I think is an amazing idea, but we
might, I think it would. I mean, seriously, there's like 1 million Kennedys. We could just, but I think for our viewers, they'll probably be like, okay, let's take a Kennedy break for a week.
Yeah. I think they might be, getting kind of ready to move on to the next topic.
It is very interesting, though. I did find after I read that book, I got stuck in a Kennedy loophole and wormhole type of thing, where it's like I started doing research on Rose and then Rosemary. I think I told you I have like on the library reserve, I have like the book about Rosemary, the Patrick Kennedy's book. So
you can go down a rabbit hole, and like one string leads to another, and it is really fascinating. It is something that, and like we talked about, your mother was, kind of felt like she was related to them. You kind of questioned if you were related to them,
Yeah.
because there's such a tie in knowing them, and so maybe
But yeah,
that's
I mean,
kind
like
of
well, and also I could see her fascination. I mean, my dad's mom and family was from like Newport, Rhode Island. My mom was from New York. My dad was from Boston. I could see my mom's like, oh wait, the Kennedys followed the same track. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, I could definitely see that with all the
yeah,
pictures,
it's
the like
very
home pictures, portraits
yeah.
of them.
One day we'll do a podcast about my mom's insanity. Just kidding.
Yeah. Yeah, we will definitely, yes, we will have to touch upon family issues. Very
How
interesting.
obsessions can be passed down each generation.
Yes, that is definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, I hope you guys have all enjoyed learning about the Kennedys. I mean, I know we did say that we're going to talk more about the fourth generation, and I really want to eventually, like one time, I do want to talk about like all that Patrick Kennedy has been open about since like 2006.
yeah,
And
we will definitely do probably a whole segment on him because he has a lot and he's the mental health
yeah,
champion.
he's pretty open, and I think he's pretty involved with NAMI too,
Yes.
which is a pretty good organization for people with families and individuals with mental health illnesses.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
But
yeah, so I guess we'll figure out what next is going to bring us. And
it'll be surprising and out of the blue and random, but we'll smack you with it,
yeah,
and if, anything to add, make sure to
mhm,
hit the subscribe button wherever
yeah.
it is.
I do wonder something. This is just put up in the air. I wonder if the different generations, if weight and food relationship with food was passed down, like a difficult relationship, or if they had a positive relationship.
Yeah, if maybe it kind of created a way to kind of learn about that and be
Mhm.
around that. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
because it
haven't
is
really
interesting.
read
Because I
too
was just
much.
thinking how you said Jean had a cooking show, so maybe she ended up
Mm.
having was able to turn that into a, you know what, I'm going to have a positive relationship with food.
That's true, yeah. I guess there's always so much to dig in for the Kennedys. We can always return to them. And we probably will. We will, but
Yeah.
we'll give you guys a little bit of a break and
Mhm.
we'll come back with some other interesting
Yeah, some
stuff. But
other. I was going to say pop culture, but I guess the Kennedys are always pop culture. Even 1938 is
oh yeah, they are a big part of it,
still
definitely.
it is. I mean, like
But
it shapes. I think it shaped the U.S. and even England too. Like part of like from what I read had
oh
some
yeah, oh
influence.
yeah, definitely.
Well, I know
Um
we're at time, so don't forget to like and subscribe.
Let us know what you think. Let us know if there's anything you'd want us to expand upon. If you do like the love languages thing, if you're not into it, if you're into it in a different, let us know anything in the comments. But we hope that you had a good time and we learned a lot. We had a great time learning about Erin's family and
Yes.
but yeah.
Right. Yep. All my uncles and aunts.
So from that point, we look forward to seeing you next week and we hope you take care.
Yep. Have
All
a
right,
great week.
guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.